Talk. Today, we are going to talk about turnaround management. Here, the Corporate Talk has a goal to put together experts around the globe to share their know-how, their expertise in their own fields, so we can learn and also feel inspired about them. And here today, I'm a very pleasure to have Maria Pombo, expert in turnaround. Maria, thank you for giving us your time, your agenda to talk to the Corporate Talk today. Do you want to share a little bit about yourself?
Yes, Caroline, thank you so much for inviting me. This is a real pleasure. What an opportunity. It's a great honor. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yes, my name is Maria Pombo. I am a certified turnaround professional and I'm also a chartered paralegal. I run a small practice in Norfolk here in the UK, and I specialize on micro and small businesses turnaround. I'm basically just helping them with the stress and all the legal work. But I also I have a dual role as a company secretary and director for the European Association of Certified Turnaround Professionals, which is a non-for-profit organization specialist in education and training and giving recognition to professionals working on the turnaround discipline. So that's me in a nutshell.
And that's a perfect start. So the topics for today, I chose turnaround, which is a very important topic currently. We see the news are not that good lately, and we see how many economic crisis is coming to the companies in many areas, and many also old companies, long-time companies that were stable, and then we see this distress coming. Let's start for the ones who are watching us, explaining what is turnaround management? What is the role of an expert in turnaround?
Oh, that's a very good question, Caroline. And I must say, it's always a good idea to start from the very beginning. I hope you don't mind, but I'm gonna split your question into three parts because turnaround in the short form is a process, a journey, if you will. Now, turnaround management is basically organizing, planning, leading that process. And that process should lead us to a positive or a different outcome. Now, what what triggers a turnaround? That is kind of the fundamental component of the definition of turnaround. And basically, is the fundamental and imperative need to change. And that's the basis of a turnaround. So this fundamental or imperative need to change is triggered either by realization, whether the companies are actually experiencing some decline on sales, they're underperforming, they're not keeping their customers, or by force. By force will be like a creditor's action, like a demand. The creditors are actually not happy, they are not being paid on time. There could be a class action by stakeholders like employees, or it could be as well issues by shareholders. So that is what triggers or what drives a turnaround. When you have that realization, that's when you really think that if something has to change, that's when you can actually be on the realm of, okay, it's time to do something about it. But you have to be on that realization to be able to apply turnaround to whatever you need to, to do within your business. So that's in a nutshell the definition. It's split into three components. And but it's quite an interesting subject because you cannot force a turnaround. You got to. I mean, a business are about people. And that's what we all are about. So the people that are leading their businesses, if they don't realize that something has to change, then turnaround won't happen. So and that's a fundamental element of what triggers a turnaround. Now, the roles of the turnaround managers. Okay, for me, this is my own personal opinion. I'm not keen on the word management, because management tend to be more like, kind of like delegating, you're organizing, you're planning.
Mhm.
Okay, there is an element of leading, but for me, it's more practitioners. So turnaround practitioners are crucial to the turnaround of the organization, simply because they have the oversight to connect the dots. No
Mhm.
business is a silo on its own, even if they have, if, talking from a large corporate perspective, you have many, kind of like small business units that are sometimes treated as silos. Um, and that's the problem. Even if there are silos, they are actually all connected. So it's incredible. But a corporate body is like a body. You have organs, you have arteries, you have neurons. So it works in the same way. So even if you have a company that have many sisters or siblings or, business units, they are all connected. So the practitioner have to basically see the full picture, and they have hands-on approach to the job.
Mhm.
Of course, we bring people together to help us to do a turnaround, because we don't know everything. We need other expertise, niche expertise. We build a team to help us, you know, uh, put into place different processes or different actions that will allow us to take the project to the next step. So that probably will be the management side. But the practitioner side is actually digging deep into the cause root of the problem. Because if you don't actually address that first, then you won't be able to actually see, you could be repeating the same patterns in the future. Means for some people, will be like changing the whole of the management structure. For some businesses, I work with a small and micro enterprises. So basically the businesses are the owners. So it's not easy for me to change the owner because that's their business. So my job is to actually be with them, to understand what drives them, and if they still have a purpose to run the business. Because a turnaround is, if in a distress scenario, it is less stressful than in an insolvency scenario. But you can do turnaround both on a pre-insolvency scenario, on a distress scenario, on an insolvency scenario. So
Mhm.
that's why a turnaround practitioner is so important, because we can actually bring the people together. We can make sense of the noise and give some sort of clarity to the noise and the mess behind.
That's
I
really
think
amazing.
if it makes sense, if it makes sense.
Totally, totally. And you mentioned this very, very well about this practitioner, this turnaround expert. He needs to have a total view of the company. He knows the structure, he knows the finances. They go even to the product price, to the controlling, to HR. So he has this total view, which is makes even more special to have this professional in a company. And how was for you, for
Yes.
example, to how the turnaround came to your career? I always heard that our career chooses us in moments of our lives. Something turns, or the career sometimes turn around and then give us the direction to go. How did you end up being a turnaround expert, which is so specialized field?
It is. It is. I've been practicing turnaround since 2008. And I didn't even know I was practicing turnaround until it was my barrister who introduced me to, to the TMA, Turnaround Management Association,
Hmm.
and the Institute for Turnaround here in the UK. And he said, I think, because when I used to go to court to, kind of explain what I'm doing to the judge and, just to actually keep the creditors abreast, just to give us a breathing space. The judge was, oh, well, she's a company doctor, or she's a fixer or a troubleshooter, or you're giving many connotations. But actually, knew what exactly I was doing. All I know I was doing is I was helping these businesses with their difficulties. And it all happened during the financial crisis. It didn't affect immediately the small businesses in 2008. It came in 2009. But in 2008, the city was still having trouble with the financial. First it was the credit crunch, and then soon after the financial, the subprime market, when Lehman Brothers collapsed. That's when things went really from bad to worse. But and then here in the UK, we had all those banks that are being, kind of like closing their doors because they have the bank runs. So it was a big disaster. But we the small business sector didn't feel it immediately. They felt it just towards the end of 2008, when the banks started to pull the plug on overdraft. They were calling overdraft. They were calling debts, and businesses couldn't simply pay back. So they were actually looking for alternative financing. And of course, and I was doing business plans. I was doing a bit of business consulting, and then they actually, I got a few projects to say, "Oh, can you help me with a business plan?" So I'm trying to raise £10,000 or £100,000, and yeah, sure. I started, and then when you start to look at, kind of how they run their operations, how they deal with their businesses, because something was always doing the same, they didn't realize that they could actually do something else without having to borrow the money. So, if you can use what you currently have or maximize the resources that you currently have, maybe you don't need the £100,000. Maybe you can actually do something else and then create another revenue stream. So, of course, there was the issue of cash flow, and then you have to actually get the cash in place. It was a very, from 2009 to 2010, it was full on, very litigious period. So to do turnaround was mostly legal kind of base. So I had to actually learn because as a practitioner, I have to come as an officer. I'm in the front line. So I actually get engaged as either as a company secretary or as an interim director. So I got as much responsibility as the director itself or the shareholder itself for their business. But it was the only way for us to be able to explain to the court without having to, when people didn't have money for solicitors at the time. So luckily, I was able to actually work with barristers on the public access basis. So I could actually engage as a litigant in person. I could engage lawyers and the barristers to help us with the cases. And that's how I got, kind of more involved into the turnaround. Well, I didn't know it was turnaround at the time. I was just trying to keep the company afloat, just keeping the creditors at bay, having to negotiate, and then put a freeze on their actions, on their legal actions, so that we can actually rescue the business. So that's how, in a nutshell, how I got started into turnaround. I was doing that until 2013, 14, and that's when my barrister, Professor Mark Watson Gandhi, he said to me, after seeing me in court all the time, I was in chambers all the time because we need to sign an application, and then he said, "Maria, I think you should really be seen as an expert on join a professional body." So there are these two professional associations that do what you do. So with businesses. So yeah, and so I became affiliated with the Institute for Turnaround, and then for the Turnaround Management Association, and then also the Institute of Paralegals, because obviously I was an officer of other businesses we were actually helping at the time. It was madness. It was madness because it just court actions everywhere. Everybody was pulling their debt. It was just crazy. And unfortunately, I had to do as well in insolvency work, like personal bankruptcies, because some small business owners are sole traders. So they don't have an incorporation or a limited company that they could have the limited. It was hard work. but it was really good fun. I learned a great deal, and helping them was very rewarding. But yes, that's how I actually go. And then once I became a member in 2013, 14, I applied to become a CTP. So with the
Oh,
EACTP, TMA UK had a connections with the EACTP, and in their website they said, become accredited, and they just started the project. So when I started to listen to the founding members, like Alan Tilly, uh, Tyrone Corman, I mean, these are major figures, Tony Groom, they're major figures in the turnaround industry here in the UK. So, and they're very well respected individuals
mhm,
here in the UK. So I admire them greatly because, the articles they wrote,
mhm.
the speeches they gave. So I was kind of starstruck and said, oh my God, there are people that do what I do and I make all sense now.
I would even show here, I have Alan Tilly book here.
Yes, well done, well done, well done.
And a
Yes,
lot of
that's
notes, as you can see. I don't
yes, no, this the book is
it's
incredible. He had
amazing.
actually before he wrote the book, he had this. Let me show you this.
Ah,
Turn
that's
around, and
that's
that
I
was
didn't saw.
yeah. This is ancient, but I mean, I still keep it because I mean, we're talking about well before 2008. It was just kind of like my favorite article. Well, this was written in 2011, and that was
Mhm.
by it was also Alan Tilly, BMNT, which they still trade. So I'm glad that you got the book. But I
I'm
will
doing my lessons learned.
yeah, kind of like well, you are actually learning well. What I would add as well, there is a new book by one very respected CTP in Romania. His name is Dr. Eugene Lasco, and he has written because the way the turnaround management book is written is more from the distressed and insolvency point of view,
Mhm.
which is what Alan Tilly has actually formulated in his book, and the methodology that
True.
they apply, which is very good. But Eugene Lasco, Dr. Eugene Lasco, he actually focused on active turnaround, which is
Mhm.
basically a more preventative
Mhm.
application of turnaround on distress and underperforming scenarios. Because
Mhm.
I'm gonna explain a bit later on about CTAs, CTPs,
That's
and
very clear. That's very clear.
on their skill sets. But
Yeah.
I will recommend to add to your library not only that turnaround book and any papers that you sing, but also the active turnaround book, because it is kind of like it's two sets. You got the
Mhm.
um change management side, the psychology side, the dealing with black swans, double economic crisis. It's kind of like having that elasticity in your approach to
Mhm.
turn around, which is constantly on the go. It's something that you can tap on at
True.
any time of the business life cycle. It
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily have to be in distress or underperforming. It can be applied
Mhm.
for other aspects. So I will strongly recommend to add that to your library of books.
I'm
And
glad for that. I'm really glad because I
yes,
can also bring here in the description the link to the all the books we are
oh
talking
yeah, yeah,
about. That
yes,
would
yes.
be good. Yeah, I
Actually,
would
I,
do
I
that.
will give you, the link to both the turnaround management from Alan Tilly and also the one from Eugene
Mhm.
Lasco after the call. Those who have audiobook and want to actually listen, if they like a little bit of history and they want to understand a little bit more of how economic cycles work, for to be elastic enough in turnaround, you really got to be more aware and curious as to why economic cycles behave the way they behave. There is a good book called The Wealth Hacks, and it is by, I tell you, the author is really, really good book. It's about, if you have an Audible, it takes about, it's about 12 hours listening. My goodness, it's like it makes sense when you start. The Secret Wealth Advantage is called, and it's by
Nice.
Akhil Patel.
Okay, later you write to me. I can also put it here. That's a good tip. Yeah, I can
Yeah,
put a list
yes,
of
the
books
Secret
here
Wealth.
below.
The Secret Wealth Advantage. I mean, from a turnaround point of view, obviously, this book is written from an investor's perspective, where to invest, how to invest, but it gives you a historic background of why we have economic cycles. So from a turnaround point of view, you could see, recessions come and go, not only how recession, but how human behavior on those recessions come and go. And that kind of, it gives you a foresight as to whether you should act in one direction or another, particularly when you're doing a turnaround. So,
Amazing. Yeah, this
yes,
is really good.
it's a very interesting audiobook. It's about 10 or 12 hours listening, but it's so well worth it.
Nice. I want to check on that. And Maria, I think now we are in a very interesting moment, right? In
Yeah.
economics. I was reading some news here that I brought as well. There is even some studies that I can put the link later in the description for the source,
Yeah.
that they mentioned that 9% of European and Middle Eastern companies in January 24 were in distress, economical distress. And for 25, in the same period, this grew to 12%. And
Yeah.
they go even for companies with distress. This is one condition. And I think it's also a link for what you mentioned about active turnaround, the need of having this active, because then he classifies the company in weakening performance. This grow for 24. We have 16% of company are in this category of weak performance. And they have even a different classification. They call it weak balance sheet. Company with weak balance sheet, it goes to 35%. It's really
Yeah.
amazing. It's really,
Yeah.
it's
No.
really a lot of companies in this. Did you also sense this also is pushing more need over turnaround experts in Europe?
Yeah, yes. I mean, I have actually been seeing the trend as well. I mean, it's not as bad as there is distress, obviously, and weakness in the imbalances for a lot of businesses, particularly the large business. But it's also small businesses are suffering big time because for large businesses, it's kind of like the economic uncertainty, taxation, the tariff was a big issue for some businesses, supply chain, materials cost has gone up, the energy crisis, Ukraine war, which is still ongoing, so it's a plethora of challenges, and of course it weakens the value of the value, it weakens the balance sheet, because also they have obligations. And underperforming is or underperformance, I have noticed is something that is not only, well, the way I see the UK at the moment is like we have a bit of an stagnation in our economy. It's dropping. We are actually heading towards another dip on the economic cycle. I don't think it's gonna be a crisis as big as we had in 2008 to 2010, where most businesses were pushed into insolvency. But I think there is and also luckily banks are better regulated now, and they have to have themselves better balance sheet, and they have to being seen to be doing the right thing rather than actually pulling the plug. But I do notice on the market, particularly on the distress market, that the non-performing loans market is still active. And that's a worrying sign for businesses, because if you have, particularly corporates that have they are highly geared, and they have different type of financial instruments that they use for financing different aspects of their businesses. If you have let's talk on a medium-sized scale, that you have a factory and you have the factory mortgage, not the plant, but just the actual land site is mortgage, and you cannot meet your monthly payments. Because you're a business, you can get your mortgage can be securitized, so it can be sold on. And then you have somebody else that will put pressure for you to pay on the mortgage. So those practices, I'm afraid that I fear that they will come back again. So
Mhm.
I think businesses need to be prepared. They need to actually be super aware of how their finance arrangements are, the contract, the covenants that they have.
Mhm.
So you got to keep an eye on many things at the same time. But one of the key issues is that, of course, if you cannot, from the small businesses point of view, if they are struggling to serve their debts, or they're all constantly looking for refinancing their overdraft or their cash flow, that's an indication. That's a big red flag that you really need to do something else.
Mhm.
That's where turnaround come into place, because you got to actually look at to what other revenue streams you can actually tap, as well as to what cost control you can actually implement in the short term, so that you can
Mhm.
actually it give you that breathing space to implement new strategies for the business. So
Yeah.
yes, there is a rise for a turnaround, but as I said before, it will have to be that realization of the business leaders that they need to do something about their balance sheet or their P&L. If they can't, then if they don't have that realization, or they think they can get by with other strategies that they implemented in the past, then they won't be able to see the bigger picture. And that's where turnarounds professionals or practitioners come into place, because we have that experience behind, where things have gone terribly wrong for some people. And believe it or not, these human behavioral patterns are always there. It's just different technology. but, but the behavior is exactly the same. How it was now, how it was 100 years ago, when you have speculations.
Exactly.
So
And then I think it opens my next question, because I believe it will be the 1 million question if we know the answer. Which is exactly about these red flags and these signs. For example, when an executive or an owner of a business, so you mentioned you specialize also for small companies. When you have a family-owned business, many years of tradition, everything worked like always since the beginning, and then now
yeah,
you mentioned the name of changes in the industry outside, material, tariffs, and so on. And this makes how could this executive or the owner of the company think about, wow, I need a turnaround now. I need to review my company. I need to review my processes. The things are not working as it was before. How to make this shift? Because I think this is the biggest question, right? The biggest challenge
yeah,
to see the
yes,
red flags. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I must say, from the corporate point of view, I mean, from larger businesses, they're more caught on, and they do look for advice early enough. That's why there is more drive for recruitment from the large consultancy groups that are looking, for turnaround professionals, because there is these large consultancy businesses provide an integrated support, like turnaround, transformation strategy. So, but from a small business point of view, um, it's basically cash flow management. So they tend to actually look for help from their accountants, sometimes from their solicitors, who are not necessarily turnaround professionals,
Mhm.
particularly nowadays, because inland revenue, or the uh, tax authorities have more um, power in terms of calling for their own debts. So and accountants have an obligation, to report all these things. So small businesses do have a little bit more of an issue to see what these red flags look like. Now, family business is another different kettle of fish altogether, because family businesses are it's not only the fact that it's run by the family, but it's the culture within the family itself, their values. And sometimes and I wouldn't say it's not being in denial, it's the fact that because they have that legacy. And the younger generation, I mean, I always heard that usually it's the third generation that dissolve the family business. I think sometimes even the second generation can do that, because children have different outlook. They don't believe in the same values that the parents have. So it's quite difficult to have and for them to see red flags when they are dealing with family matters. So because for them it's I mean, some children do respect their parents and they want to continue the legacy they inherited, particularly if the parents are long gone. But if they're passing it on to the next generation and they don't agree to the previous generation values, then you have that conflict. And that conflict is too overwhelming for them to see the underlying issues with their own businesses. Like things are not going well, or you're seeking wrong advice, or you make decisions that are not necessarily helpful for the business. So when you're actually working with family businesses, you got those additional challenges, because you got to get to know the family first before you can actually get to know to get to work on the business. Obviously, if there are pressing issues like, a creditor putting a statutory demand, then you have to actually deal with that. But at the same time, in tandem, you have to understand what drives the family to continue the business, or what is the structure of the family to be able to actually work with if there going to be some sort of exit for them in the future, or if they're going to hand it over to the next generations. It's a more delicate matter with family businesses, but they are the ones that are most vulnerable, and they are the ones that they tend to actually look for individuals specific advice rather than one that is holistic. So and that's a bit of a problem in my perspective, because sometimes an accountant will then give the same advice as a lawyer, and vice versa. They only see it from that particular issue. Whereas in turnaround, you have to see the full picture holistically. You have to connect the dots, because it's all like a domino effect. It's like you have a cat. If you have a cat, you bleed. So something else will be missing from your system. So until you put the plaster, you won't be able to actually recover from the cells to recover. So you have to drink more water, and then you have to actually have a rest. So it's I mean, I know it's an analogy, but it has to be given, it has to be treated the whole aspect. Whereas if you have individual advice from, I'm going to an accountant or I go to a lawyer, then they will only give you a specific advice for that specific issue. They won't be able to see the full picture. And that's where sometimes small businesses struggle to see. Corporates can see better, because obviously they go more advisors online, the resources, and they can tap to that. But small businesses don't have that foresight, I'm afraid. And some small business, they're really great at capturing companies, or capturing customers, sorry, but no, they can't see the behind the scene, on their structure and the business structure, what could be their risks and how to mitigate those risks. But they're really good at keeping customers, and there are all different type of business models these days that can work. But it's also bound to consumers' demand as well, isn't it? And at the moment, there is that issue that people are very concerned as to what's happening in the economy from the consumer point of view. So when there is that fear in the market, then you get less demand for products. So it's again,
Mhm.
it's a domino effect.
That's
And
true.
so that's why, I mean, it's difficult because, I mean, we have budgets twice a year, and that's when, you know, kind of business owners should be actually seeing the indication on the budgets as to what will affect them, but what will affect their customers. Because
Mhm.
if their customers are squeezed, then you know that it's gonna come back to you to bite you in your
Yeah.
bum later on.
Yeah, a pressure will come. And I really
Yeah,
like what you mentioned about this view of turnaround professionals that connects the dot in the whole company. And
yeah,
let's go to the question of the certification. You mentioned you're also a member, director of EACTP, the European Association of Certified Turnaround Professionals that provides the certifications, right, for the professionals who wants to go. Can you tell a little bit about how this certification works? If somebody here would be interested to run or to learn more about it.
yeah. No, absolutely. I'm a big fan of, I think a skill sets is. I mean, it's such a turnaround. It's such a beautiful profession. I must say, it's a discipline on its own. It's interesting, and it can be fast paced. But I just love how integrate three major disciplines, which is basically at its core is management and leadership, legal and commerciality and finance. So those kind of like those are the core building blocks of a turnaround course, or the CTA, the Certified Turnaround Analyst course that we have developed in collaboration with TMA. But also is beyond that, you have the soft skills, the communications, the curiosity to understand what is not being said, or the negotiation skills, or the understanding your counterparts, what their needs are and what their agendas are, so that you can actually prepare yourself for that, on a response that you can give and take. And that's what we actually trying to explore within the EACTP, just outside the course. So we have two programs. We have the CTA program, which is the basic on how to get into. It's a postgraduate course, and it was developed as well in collaboration with the Leiden University, and we actually have. It's postgraduate because it's online, it's pure online, and it will be easier for people that have that discipline of studying, of doing research, to take the course. And and it's always helpful to have a little bit of insight, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that you have to be a graduate from on a specific field to be able to do it. To be fair, I have CTP members that have applied for the accreditation, and they have never been to court, and they have never, have to experience dealing with a whole restructuring plan, because they were able to turn around their businesses before even they hit the
Mhm.
insolvency,
This
kind of.
active turnaround you mentioned, right? It doesn't need
Yes,
to
that's
be
the
the
active
insolvency.
turnaround. Yeah, exactly. So, and some people, that have done the active turnaround come from engineering backgrounds. They come from even medical backgrounds. So, I mean, obviously, some people opt to go the route of the CTA because they want to brush in the skill, or kind of like improve their financial skills, or understand better the legal skills, because the legal tools that we use for turnaround is mostly on the restructuring side. So if something doesn't work on a kind of like close the doors behind the close negotiations, then unfortunately, yes, you have to go the legal route. But these are the tools that are available that you can actually deploy Here in the UK, we have obviously we have the scheme of arrangement, which is one of the ones that I prefer, but also we have the restructuring plans applications, which is basically a new tool that allows you to cram down dissenting creditors to be able to actually do the turnaround. But that is kind of pre-insolvency, but you can still
Mm-hmm.
do a turnaround. Ideally, it would be better to do active turnaround all the time, but you can do turnaround on an insolvency process as well. So that's why some of our CTP members are also insolvency practitioners. So we have a whole broad of different disciplines that practice their own profession, but they also do practice turnaround. And
That's
and that's
nice. Mm-hmm.
so that's the two kind of programs that we have. The one, the basic one, which is, give you the basic tools, but then you grow on to become a CTP. Unfortunately, there is no a book that will tell you how to be a CTP, because your
Exactly.
your book is your case studies, and your case study is a universe on its own. So what will work in one case study might not necessarily work in another case study. And also you have cultural differences. Believe it or not, here in the UK, depending where you work, you have a company in London, their culture is different to companies in Norfolk. The same happens in Europe.
That's
So
true.
each turnaround is so different. Is so different. So you cannot actually become a turnaround practitioner uh, on a book. You just have to treat your cases one by one, and it does take a little bit of time. I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
CTA course, we tend to ask people to do it within a period of 2 years. Some students can do it a lot quicker. And then you have professionals that are already working on the restructuring field. They can do it a lot quicker. And then they have to build, we expect them to actually move on to being CTPs. So they have to actually build their case studies to be able to present, to apply for the practitioner or the CTP accreditation. But it takes about, I would say it takes about 10 years to become a CTP. Because
Mm-hmm.
depending on, I mean, I know some professionals can actually turn around a business in 2 years. For the small businesses, that if it's pre-insolvency, I think businesses that are insolvent or in that realm, it takes about 5 years to sort them out. I have worked
Mm-hmm.
with, I have done turnaround on an insolvency processes, and it does take 5 years to actually get them out onto the light. So, but you can be working in 2 or 3 different projects at the same time and
Mm-hmm.
just see how they progress. So, and I know that some professionals can actually do a lot quicker depending on their pipeline, or how they stress, or how quickly they can actually put them into place. But the sweet spot is 3 years. When you know that the business has broken even, or but there is no such thing as successful turnaround. It's just what direction the business takes. That's what
Mm-hmm.
makes the turnaround. So
Interesting. Yeah, and also for this turnaround analyst, the first certification you mentioned, if we see this in the whole transformation and this distress in in many industries all over the globe in the moment, if we have, can I conclude from all of what we are talking, that if we have more turnaround experts, analysts, then it would be then probable this active turnaround in place to avoid companies to go to this insolvency and distress. Yeah.
absolutely, that is in my wish list. To be fair, I mean, we at the EACTP we have another program, which is the corporate program, and this is where we give recognition and accreditation to employers that invest in their talent. I mean, the accreditation is given to an individual because only an individual can be called a turnaround professional or a practitioner. And but a corporate accreditation is for those businesses that actively support their staff to become to train them to actually prepare them for this for these turnarounds. And for me, I mean, I would like to see more businesses, particularly consultancies firms, investing in their staff, preparing them, and also not only having them certified, but also employ already individuals that have already been certified. Not limit themselves to accountants or insolvency practitioners or lawyers. I think there is a terrible need for, particularly here in the UK, for employers to change how they recruit, their people, particularly if they
Mhm.
provide turnaround and restructuring services. Yes, of course, you need a lawyer for the restructuring side or the insolvency side, or an insolvency practitioner for that matter. But I think CTAs have so much to bring, particularly that industry expertise, because not all of our CTAs students work on the turnaround field or in the industry, on the restructuring industry like insolvency and things like that.
Mhm.
Some of our CTA students are professionals within an industry sector. It could be, manufacturing, it could be automotive, it could be, technology, and they have that foresight of that particular business, how it works, because it's intricate. It's like kind of like granular knowledge that most insolvency practitioners wouldn't know. They will know how to actually move the business about, but they wouldn't understand the product manufacturing, the licenses that they need. They wouldn't understand the health and safety behind it, or the environmental issues. And so you do need that extra additional expertise. And if we have CTAs, more CTAs with more industry knowledge, that will be a part of my dream. Yes. So
I will share this wish list with you as well. So
yes,
I will,
please.
and I
I
can
want
put
to,
here.
but mostly I want to see more employers, employing CTAs and CTPs in their books.
Very
That is it.
nice. That would be perfect. So what I will do to help, I will put in the description here the website
Yes,
so then
please.
people can really reach out and learn more about it.
Oh,
Maria, it was
absolutely.
a pleasure, really amazing to talk with you. Thank you for sharing. We can feel the
No.
passion on the turnaround. I feel that too. And I hope we are
Yeah, no, I mean,
inspiring more people as well.
yes. I think turnaround. I mean, obviously, some people look at it as a okay. For me. I do run a practice. For me, it's a personal growth, because it's such a beautiful discipline to be able to tap on. And I know I wouldn't make myself rich, because I work with small businesses and micro businesses, and they hardly can afford me. so so you got to work with their with their turnover, and to be able to help them. But on a larger scale, there is the need for more turnaround. Of course, the market, I've seen the numbers. Ernest and Young did a fantastic report about, the growth on the turnaround market, and is set to the CAGR is about 15 to 20% growth in the next year. So I think
Mm.
if people can, it just gives you an indication that demand is there, particularly at the corporate level, and I think it will be a good idea for people to have the additional skills. So train yourself to the CTA, build the foundations, and just don't fear if you get the opportunity to be assigned in a project. Own it and then go for it, because it's well worth. It's hard work, and it's like stressful, but
Yeah.
it's a good journey to actually start.
That's really nice. Let's have more active
Uh,
turnaround to
yes,
avoid
and
to
more
reduce these
active
numbers
turnaround.
of this stress. This is really good.
Yeah, I
Great.
will send the links. Actually, we asked Eugene to do a video, because he should do a video about his book. He got his doctorate from the research he did, and it took him 2 years to do the research. But what I love of his book is that he combines change management, which change management, transformation, and turnaround. which from most corporates that don't like to be seen as they are struggling, they tend to look for transformation specialists rather than turnaround. And that is, there are very different kind of like approaches to that the discipline, and Eugene brings those three disciplines into one book, and I think it's brilliant. It's so helpful.
Amazing. This is makes
It is
totally
amazing.
sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
really good. Maria, thank you so much for your time today. It was a
No.
pleasure to have you.
Oh,
Looking
thank you
forward
for
for
having
our
me.
next meeting in the masterminds. There is also a
Yes, yes. Oh,
mastermind
yes, I
meeting.
forgot. I'm glad that you mentioned the mastermind. Oh, please do come to the masterminds. If you are not if you are not sure about turnaround, come to the masterminds. It's open to everybody. All professionals working, and you get a little bit of a gist of what we do. It's led by CTPs, and it's really interesting topics, and it doesn't cost that much.
Really
To
great.
join us.
Thank you. Then we will see us in the next mastermind, definitely. And
I
thank you for
will.
your time here, Maria, for
Thank
sharing your
you.
knowledge with us.
No, thank you for the opportunity. I hope it was helpful for many people.
It was definitely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Take
Bye.
care. Bye. Bye.